So over one August weekend, barbed wire actually separated a city by making a wall, and then eventually that divided city is separated by concrete. I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history teacher, and I'm here to take you through Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire line by line. We covered Dylan in the last episode, and we're moving on now to Berlin, and then we'll move on to Bay of Pigs invasion. When Billy Joel sings Berlin in the song, he's pointing to the showdown that brings the Cold War kind of into hyper-focus. You have the sudden arrival of the Berlin Wall of August of 1961, and then the crisis that happens to surround it. So a little backstory. After World War II, Berlin is split into Soviet and then Western-controlled sectors between the U.S., the British, and the French. Germany itself is split into a western portion controlled by the West, and then the eastern section that is, effectively oversaw by the Soviets. And through the 1950s, people who lived in East Germany, the East Germans, were unhappy with shortages and repression, and they begin using Berlin as kind of, an escape valve. And millions end up leaving East Germany by simply crossing the lines in the city. And by 1961, Walter Ulbricht's East German leadership, backed by Moscow, decided to stop this exodus of East Germans. So on August 13th of 1961, troops began to unspool barbed wire across streets in the early hours. This is Barbed Wire Sunday. The barrier begins to harden over months into concrete walls and guard towers and floodlights and a cleared death strip, like a no man's land kind of thing. East Germany called it the anti-fascist protective rampart, but to the west it was a prison wall. Families woke up separated, commutes vanished, and apartments that straddled the line suddenly had bricked up windows. Tensions will then spike that fall. At Checkpoint Charlie in October of '61, U.S. and Soviet tanks faced off against each other across the crossing. They had their engines idling, the guns were leveled, and after some back-channel phone calls, both sides just kind of backed up, inched back. And the standoff ended without any shots fired, but the message was clear. Berlin could be a fuse that sets it all off. So life kind of settles into a grim normal. You had escape attempts that continued. There was tunnels and balloons from rooftops, some successful, many weren't. More than 100 people died at or near the wall over the years of trying to flee, which was a statistic that turned, the concrete of the walls into a moral argument. Speeches framed the stakes here in Berlin. When John F. Kennedy was there, his, Ich bin ein Berliner in 1963 was meant to affirm solidarity. Decades later, when Ronald Reagan visits there, he challenges Mr. Gorbachev to tear down this wall. Well, the barrier, the wall, stood until 1989, when protests and a bungled announcement opened the crossings, and Berliners pulled the wall down piece by piece. So, why is Berlin in the lyric? Well, because it compresses a city into a symbol. You got freedom versus control, movement versus containment, frontline versus, home. And all of that was visible in one place. And when we tie it back into the song, when Billy Joel sings Berlin, he tags the 1961 wall. And then you got the tank standoff in a capital that really turned, geopolitics into almost like street geography, the way this city was divided. And the reason why it matters, well, Berlin shows how borders can shape lives and how infrastructure can be used for propaganda. It also explains the Cold War's daily reality. You had to have permits and guards and guard towers, and why images eventually of a wall falling really felt like history was turning. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, share, comment, all of those kind of things. I would really appreciate it. We're going to continue moving on here. Like I said at the beginning, we're moving on from Berlin, and our next video up will be the Bay of Pigs invasion. Thanks for watching.